Hello, Mr. Bailey and CitizenNetReporter viewers. This is Joseph Ricca, the Superintendent of Schools in the White Plains City School District, and I'm really happy to be able to spend a few minutes with you, give you some updates on things that are happening in the district. First, there was a policy decision that came from Washington this week. We're still learning about it, but it's sort of a 180-degree reversal from where President Biden, when he was candidate Biden, was positioned with regard to standardized testing during this academic year. So what we've heard is now the federal government is going to require that school districts across the country administer high-stakes standardized assessments. Here in New York, that would look like tests in grades 3 through 8, and of course, the Regents examinations that are part of graduation requirement. This is a challenge, to say the least, as we're presently working to phase all of our children back into our facilities on a daily basis. We really believe that the focus should be on that work and making sure that children are coming back to school. School facilities are reopening successfully and safely without the added burden of high-stakes standardized assessments looming over our children's heads and of course our educational community members as well. The other challenge is that the tests, the way they're being described, don't count. So these assessments aren't going to be used to designate status for school districts nationwide. They're not going to be used to evaluate educators. They're not going to be used apparently as graduation prerequisite for graduation, which begs the question, then why are we going to do it? Our position, what we've advocated for, was that the tax dollars that have been earmarked, which are millions and millions of dollars, be transferred from high-stakes standardized assessments at the federal level to reopening schools and to providing tests like COVID-19 screening tests so that school districts and schools across the country can safely begin to welcome their children back. It's important to remember that a lot of places, even in New York, children haven't been in their facilities at all this year. That is a major, major problem for us nationally. And so we believe that it's important that those resources and that time and that energy be devoted to safely reopening school facilities and welcoming children back. Here in New York, we're really fortunate. The Chancellor of the Board of Regents and the Regents, and of course the Commissioner of Education, have indicated that they're going to work to provide the most flexibility that the federal government will allow. They had advocated for a moratorium again this year on high-stakes standardized assessments, as we did. And their position right now is we're going to try and provide as much flexibility to school districts. We've not yet seen that guidance. It's only just the last few days that we learned of this, but we do anticipate that there are going to be some changes. For instance, you can take these tests remotely from home. They may be shortened. They may be pushed off to another time in this academic year or even the beginning of next academic year. All of which, to, by the way, the discerning viewer or listener would say, well, if there are no standards to these standardized assessments, why are we spending the money and the time administering them? It's a great question, and we've not yet heard the answer to it from the government. We're continuing to advocate for this conversation to not be over. So I'll be happy to give you an update and let you know where we are when we hear more from the federal government and also from the New York State Education Department and our Board of Regents. But interesting, a very interesting turn of events indeed, and really, unfortunately for many folks, and I know teachers, especially, and parents feel this way, really a departure from what was promised prior to the most recent election. With regard to vaccination of our educational community members, our teachers, the adults, as you know, that was a pillar point of one of our greatest efforts as soon as the vaccine became available to school personnel. And I'm happy to really share some great news. We've made tremendous progress in being able to help our folks get vaccinated if they're willing and able to do so. So with the support of our local associations and their leadership, and of course the County of Westchester, we have already surpassed more than half of the outstanding vaccination needs in the White Plains City School District. Remember, we have about 1,250 employees. And we are well beyond, I believe, 60% who were willing and able to be vaccinated, and they're already vaccinated or they're in process. So that's fantastic news for White Plains. We have worked regionally and county-wide to make sure that these efforts are replicated, again, with the partnership in our associations in the school districts all throughout Westchester County. And that's good for everyone. Because the more folks who are vaccinated in our county community, the better chance we have of achieving a herd immunity sooner, and of course, reducing potential community spread. But the best news, of course, is that that helps us to bring all of our children back into our facilities on a daily basis, something that we've all been working so hard to do over the last year now. It's really, we're approaching the 1 year mark. So great news. And we are moving forward with our reopening plans. We just had another district reopening committee meeting on Wednesday of this week. And I would invite anybody who is interested in learning more about where we are in reopening to take a look at that video. It's posted on the district's website and available on the district's Facebook page as well. Have there been any positive COVID-19 tests in our athletic program since we've moved to the so-called high-risk sports? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. And we anticipated that that would occur, just as we know it occurs almost on a daily basis in the school district. The good news, of course, is that we have a fantastic team in place to work in concert with the Department of Health to contact trace, isolate, and quarantine. Of course, it's a nuisance for everybody. I know that, but at the same time, we are able to identify students or adults who may be ill and then help to make sure that we sequester others who were in contact with them. Our teams are running, they're operational, and we're really happy about that. But COVID-19 still exists, and it will still continue to be a factor in really our daily operations here in the district. And the last question that we're going to attend to today is the current White Plains schools infection rate of staff, teachers, and students has been reported right about 3%. And that is good. You want to see 0, of course, but the mitigation efforts and all of the hard work of our team members in our community has truly allowed us to make our schools as safe as they can be. This has never been about outrunning COVID-19. It's not about doing away with COVID-19. It's about managing the risk and lowering the risk in all ways possible. And I think because of the efforts of so many folks in our community, we've been able to achieve that. We got to keep an eye on it. It's everyday work. It requires responsibility and commitment from all involved in the educational community. So what does that mean? It means if I'm not feeling well, I have to stay home. It means if my child's not feeling well, I have to keep my child home until I know for sure that it's not a situation of COVID-19. But really, one of the things that we've learned throughout the course of the pandemic is if we're sick, we should stay home. And that's not normal for us. Before the pandemic, right, we've sort of been conditioned to push through a cold or a little touch of the flu. But what we know is that when I'm pushing through that, chances are I'm infecting somebody else in close quarters in my workplace. It's not just schools, right? It's everywhere. So we've learned a lot. And I think that's helping keep folks healthy from COVID-19 and all the rest of the communicable illnesses that you would normally experience during the winter months. So that's good news. There are active cases still in the district every day, and we're contact tracing and working through those issues on a daily basis. Fortunately, right now, I'm not aware of any hospitalizations at the moment, which again is fantastic news. And we have to remember, even as we move forward into a full reopening, that this process is going to still continue to exist. We're not talking about inoculating children at this time. So, there are still many, many members of our community who aren't going to be vaccinated. And we have to be vigilant and we have to do our part to protect them. So all of the safety mitigations are going to remain in place, even as we re-enter into the facilities full-time every child. That's going to be part of our processes for a while, and that's okay. The most important thing is that we are able to welcome all of our children back into our schools and continue to be able to support them and their families. Some might ask, well, what about if I can't bring or I can't send my child or don't want to send my child? I'm concerned, I have an issue. And yeah, that's okay. We'll still have a remote option available for this academic year. We don't anticipate that it will be available at the beginning of the 2021-2022 academic year, but for the remainder of this academic year, that will be in place. So that's a brief update. I hope that I answered all of your questions. As always, I'm happy to come back and connect with you, answer any questions that you might have. There is a plethora of information available to all of our community members on our district's website under the reopening heading, and you can find all of the information related to COVID-19 and the district's initiatives to operate during the pandemic, as well as our plans moving forward for the remainder of the academic year. Thanks again, Mr. Bailey. Thanks to everybody who participates in the CitizenNet Reporter, and we'll see you soon. Stay WP proud. Take care.